Hi, everybody. Good evening. Yoo-hoo. Hi, everybody. I'm Lorraine Zamora, president of Three Parks Independent Democrats. I know you know that. Can you hear me? Okay. Thanks for being here. Everybody, faces front. You want to talk about the party? Okay, stay up here. Anyway, tonight's... He's already here? Tonight's meeting is the first of a series of club meetings. This is endorsement time. Remember endorsement time? It's here again. And so it's time to endorse local candidates that are running for office. And tonight, District Attorney Alvin Bragg, District Attorney Alvin Bragg is the first candidate in our endorsement process. At our club meetings in January and February, we'll hear from candidates running for mayor, controller, public advocate, borough president, city council, judges, judicial delegates, district leaders, and finally, the Three Parks Board of Directors. Stay after our DA leaves. Please stay to hear about our holiday party and the future of the Metro Theater, because our DA is here now. Would you like it? You want to pull up a chair, or are you going to stand? I'll do whatever. Okay. So first, this is such a pleasure because I remember meeting D.A. Bragg. He was Alvin to us then. I remember you're still Alvin. When Richie Fife brought Alvin Bragg to us on 104th Street and Broadway and introduced us. And Alvin was in his gray sweatshirt and sweatpants. No branding. I said, "Where's your name? How's anyone going to remember you if you don't have a name? How is this guy going to make it as DA?" Well, was I wrong, right? He's so modest in everything he does, even after the... Well, the thing is, in his sweatshirt and sweatpants, he cruised to victory, And I hope that Three Parks helped make that happen, Alvin, because we have been so proud of you, and he took office in January 2022. Well, he was the first prosecutor to win a criminal conviction of a former U.S. president. Need I? And after being asked how he felt about it, he said, "I did my job." Modest as ever, but fully confident. That's the thing. He's not political. He's just confident. Now, he's making the headlines. I don't even think he wants to make the headlines, but he makes the headlines. Now he's expressed a controversial opinion on the recent case involving the stabbing. Daniel Penny, who stabbed Jordan Neely in the subway. And now, I guess, you're prepping for the case involving Luigi Manzioni, right? I don't know, in the stabbing of the CEO of United Healthcare, who recently stayed at this hostel, by the way. Anyway, wherever you turn, you're making headlines, whether you like it or not, Alvin. We are so thrilled to have you to ourselves. And we're eager to hear how your experience with the DA, and I'm wondering why you're ever running again. Can he?
great. This is perfect.
Is that okay?
Good evening. This is. I'm humbled by the welcome because you're right. I'm trying to not be in the papers as much. Sometimes the articles aren't so great, so it's great to feel the warmth of this room. That was my very first political club event ever in Central Park. I was thinking about it on the way. I was thinking about the green shirts and all of the gratitude I have for the club, and I was introducing myself as someone who grew up a few blocks to the north in Harlem, but spent a lot of time on the Upper West Side in school, someone who done civil rights work, had been a former prosecutor, and y'all took me in, and I'm forever grateful. And then I saw as we ripened and went further in the campaign, these green shirts everywhere on the Upper West Side, and it was phenomenal. So I'm really, really grateful to be back. You know, as district attorney, and it's a rule that makes sense because of the independence of the office, we're not permitted to be with clubs unless it's our cycle and we're on the ballot. So I have missed you, and I'm happy to be back, and be back particularly in this moment where there's a lot of work to do, and I know you all do the work. I want to give a little report on kind of what I've been up to the last 3 years, and was hoping maybe to talk about some things that aren't in the press that I think we should give more attention. And so I wanted to talk about the work of the office in three buckets. The first is violent crime. The second is what people refer to as sort of quality of life crime, and I would put that under the banner of mental health, because a lot of that we're seeing as a result of our mental health crisis. And the third bucket is holding powerful people accountable. We started a worker protection unit, a tenant protection unit, and I want to talk a little bit about that. And all of this work is inspired by you and the trust you placed in me. And so I feel very, very kind of encouraged to be back and talk about it. So in the violent crime bucket, the number one thing that we give primacy to is to gun violence. I remember probably in that introduction talking about experiencing gun violence myself growing up in Harlem. It is the crime that sort of drives the perception of safety the most. It sort of just catches people. It's also probably our most encouraging crime stat data. In the last 3 years, shootings in Manhattan are down about 48%. Yeah, we're very proud of that. And we got there through a very intensive kind of hybrid of focused prosecution. We know who is driving the gun violence, and pairing that with strategic community investments. It pains me a little bit to say I'm going to use an example from the other side of the park, but it's a really good one, illustrative of our work. In East Harlem, Johnson and Jefferson housing developments, it was the most violent part of the city in 2022. So we met with the NYPD at the end of the year, and we said we need to focus. We knew who the shooters were. We focused with great precision, didn't bring some big unwieldy case. We brought 10 prosecutions, held the people who were driving crime the most accountable, and we paired that with talking with community groups and giving grants, because we know when there's a big prosecution, it creates a vacuum and people step into it. That hybrid approach, we went from July 8th of 2023 to February of 2024 with absolutely no shootings in the part of the city that had been the most violent the year before. So we're looking to port that model throughout the borough and really double down on that. So that's guns. The second is a lot of that discussion, that early discussion we talked about, kind of the state of the sex crimes prosecution unit and domestic violence in the Manhattan DA's office. So I'm pleased to report that we've stood up its own division. We put that on par with the other street crimes. We gave it dedicated resources, dedicated prosecutors, dedicated training, and it's on a glide path to being fully staffed by next January. But we can already see the fruits. We're doing challenging cases. Just to highlight one prosecution, we prosecuted a doctor who was using his prescription pad as a weapon and getting his patients, a group of women, really reliant on him, and then sexually abusing them. That case went to trial by our seasoned prosecutors, and we got a conviction there. That's the type of work that unit is doing. The third in our sort of violent crime bucket is hate crimes. When I came into office, we were at an all-time high with kind of AAPI, hate crime. I went to, I don't know if we've got our council member in the house, but I went to our council and said I need more funding. We had 3 people working on hate crimes. They allotted us an additional $1.7 million. We went from 3 prosecutors trained in the statute to 17. We doubled down on our outreach, along with sex crimes. Hate crimes are kind of very, very underreported. So we doubled our outreach, and now we have, very, very sadly, more cases than we've ever had. And while anti-AAPI hate crime is obviously still something we're focusing, we've seen a lot of anti-Semitic hate crime, and that is now sort of the top of our docket in hate crimes. But if we're working with the new resources we have, and I will just say, really an inclusive approach. So if you think it's a hate crime, you don't have to figure that out. You can call us, and we will figure that out. It's not always, we don't need an epithet or something that's drawn at the scene. We're looking at social media. We're looking at people's email accounts. We're doing search warrants and to figure out if something is a hate crime. So those are our top 3 areas in violent crime, and things are going well. We obviously have a lot more work to do. I want there to be no shootings. I want there to be no hate crimes. But as overall, index crime in Manhattan is down about 11%. So we're going to continue to sort of double down on what we've been doing. The part that is the most challenging, and I don't have to tell you this, you see it with your own eyes, is the sort of mental health crisis. And I mean, I hesitate to take a poll. I'll just say myself, we've all waited like 10 minutes for toothpaste. And so we're all sort of seeing also the effects of that on shoplifting or sort of just people in distress in the streets. We've done a few things in the district attorney's office. The first thing, and I think the most important within the kind of 4 corners of our work, is we have doubled our footprint in our problem-solving courts. So we have a mental health court, a drug diversion court. In that drug diversion court, we've added a mental health track, and then we also have sort of an omnibus diversion court. We have doubled the footprints, and the success is now, it proves itself. Our recidivism rate for our graduates of those courts is far lower than people who are coming back from state prison. So we have a proof of concepts. I believed in this so much, and we were sort of expanding so much initially that the court said, wait, like we don't have the capacity. Will you pay for this? So we literally wrote a check to the courts. I'm happy to say this past year they met us and they are funding it. It's a court appropriation. So we need to continue to expand our problem-solving courts, and that sort of helps us once something becomes a case. We're really trying to help with prevention, so we funded some navigators, people who kind of have themselves experienced these issues, to be out in our communities, connecting with people, the kind of work that involves kind of basically crossing the street to engage with people who most of us, understandably, across the street to avoid. That is already starting to pay dividends in the neighborhoods where we're doing that. And most recently, in August, we funded Fortune Society, who many of you may know, the reentry program. We funded them. They are now in our arraignment parts. Anytime someone leaves court, whether it's they're released on their own recognizance, they make bail, whatever it may be, Fortune is there, and they just ask one simple question: what do you need? If it's food, they will help connect them with food. If it's services, they will help connect them with services. And most importantly, they have the capability and have been taking people straight from our courthouse to transitional housing and helping them stabilize. I think, the way we do this is we sort of test it and we wait for the data, and so I'm not quite there yet to say we have the sort of proof on this, but my prediction is that this will be quite successful, and it is something we will go to the city and ask to take to scale, and maybe one of the most impactful things we could do for public safety and for stabilizing people. The last bucket is holding the powerful accountable, and we've been doing that in a lot of ways. The ways that maybe don't get as much attention, but I'm very proud of, is our worker protection unit. The district attorney's office has long been active, particularly sort of the construction space, on wage theft and worker safety. We've expanded that into retail, and we do a lot of these cases that involve kind of millions of dollars, which is great and fine, and obviously those workers need their wages back too. I've been encouraging our unit, and I think some of the kind of most impactful work we've done have been small dollars. We did a worker safety case for a day laborer who was owed $7,000, and when he went to collect on the money he had earned, he was told to go back to his country, and he was assaulted. We have another case where someone was working and was locked in his workspace, again for an amount about $10,000, and when he went to collect, his employer said, "What are you going to do? I'm going to call ICE, and my lawyers are better than yours." He didn't know that the people that stayed in New York were going to be the lawyers in the case. And so I'm very proud of that work. It is the kind of stuff that's not on the front pages, but it's sort of the day-to-day. If you don't get paid for your job, how's that advancing public safety? We also started a tenant protection unit. We have a couple of active matters going, one against a landlord who's sort of perennially on the sort of worst landlord list of just horrible criminal, we allege, working conditions. We are, and this gets some attention, sort of really active in the kind of public integrity space. That's sort of the work that I've worked on the longest. I was in the public corruption unit when I was a federal prosecutor. I was in the public corruption unit when I was at the State Attorney General's office, and we'll continue to prioritize that. And I'll close with, because this is something we talked about when we were last together, holding ourselves accountable. And so we have rebooted our conviction integrity unit. We have adopted a very collaborative model led by a former public defender who, when we get an application for relief, sits down as kind of working through side by side with the person's counsel. We have vacated, or we've moved to vacate, and the judges have granted vacators in 10 convictions. 5 of them are homicides. And then we've also approached it from another perspective of when we get an allegation of police misconduct, a law enforcement officer who's been convicted of lying or perjury or something like that, we are initiating our own investigations, and we've avoided about 500 convictions based on that kind of misconduct. And I guess I'll close with, for me, you said, how has the DA's office been going? So for me, I'm proud of all of that work and proud of sort of the kind of personal experiences that I bring to that when I'm thinking about a mental health crisis. I'm thinking about my late father, who worked in homeless shelters and sort of introduced me literally to people who were in distress and was inspired by the work he did. When I'm thinking about our gun work, I'm thinking about not only my own personal experiences long ago, but also my block was a crime scene for 30 bullets, like 6 months before I was DA, and had to navigate my teenage children through a crime scene to get home. So it's all very personal. But you asked about the office. So I'll kind of close with, I think, probably the most kind of profoundly personal moment for me, and that is our conviction integrity work. And we talked about the exonerated 5 when we were together. Was something Yusef Salam, now my council member, endorsed me before he was in public life in that way. And so I've gone to court personally myself, and sat in the seat and said Alvin Bragg for the people twice. One time was to move to vacate the conviction for Stephen Lopez. The Central Park 5 were actually the Central Park 6. 6 people were on the indictment. Stephen Lopez sat and watched as his 5 peers and co-defendants were convicted in 2 separate trials. His was to be the 3rd, based on the same now, debunked science and the same now recanted testimony. And they said, look, jury's waiting in the wings. What are you going to do? And he took a plea not to the Central Park jogger assault, but to another assault, just because he saw the jury coming and he'd see what happened. Under New York criminal procedure law, if you take a plea, you are differently situated from a trial conviction. So in the early 2000s, the other 5 had their conviction vacated. Stephen Lopez didn't, and he waited literally for decades, and this had a effect of all the collateral consequences on his life. So for me, kind of the sort of the most poignant personal moment was going into court saying, Alvin Bragg for the people, we moved to vacate Stephen Lopez's conviction, and that happened, and that to me is what being DA is all about. So thank you so much for giving me that opportunity.
questions as we can while we have DA Bragg here. So please keep your questions brief. Give yourself a minute to ask the question and not more, and I think that'll work out.
Hi. I would like to ask about what sources of federal financial support the Manhattan DA's office receives, in what areas, and are you at all concerned with the change in government in Washington, how your collaboration with federal authorities, including the FBI, will be affected?
It's a great question. Thank you. It's great to see you. So we looked at this a couple of weeks ago, our budget. Thankfully, our budget, we get, I think it's 1% or something like that from the federal government. It's an important 1%. It funds in part, our Survivor Services Bureau, so our social workers and our advocates and our counselors who are supporting victims and survivors. And we've expanded the footprint of that work, and our support services to victims, our emergency support services are up about 300%. So if we lose that funding, that important expansion will be affected. But it is only 1% of our budget, and we can hopefully be nimble. The issue is we get a lot of money from the state and the city, and if they are under crunches because of different federal priorities, we undoubtedly will feel that. So it will be a bit indirect, but it's something we're concerned about, and we've already started to take into consideration as we sort of want to be financially prudent. We're kind of in a sort of a wait-and-see approach, and we'll see what happens. I think we're still on a budget extender federally, and so the incoming Congress will make some pretty important decisions very, very fast. In terms of actual case making and the federal administration, we are thinking a lot about that with some concern, and I don't want to be naive, but I also do want to we'll see the incoming federal prosecutor from Manhattan. Want to meet with folks and talk about priorities. We do a lot of work together now, and so I'm hoping that on the local level, that we will continue that. The FBI we've worked with as recently as this past week, and we'll see who actually gets confirmed. So this is an issue of concern. I'm trying to be a little bit politic, but it's an issue of concern that could really affect. We have so many federal-state partnerships that if the dynamic fundamentally changes and our budget is cut, it will be challenging to continue to do the work we're doing. And some of the things that are more prospective, so to give an example, we're always, the cases that are kind of coming to us, we are able to do, but I've tried to carve out more space for prospective investigations. So someone shoplifts, that comes to us, we will, do that case. It may be diversion, it may be traditional incarceration, who knows, depends upon the facts of the case. We recently did a case involving a kind of a brother-sister tandem that were a fencing operation. We did a search warrant, and they had $1 million worth of shoplifted goods. Like, that kind of investigation takes time and planning and resources, and I worry about that getting crunched.
So first I want to express my appreciation for your work as our district attorney. I do have a question for you. I'm very proud of your work to make sure no one's above the law, including Donald Trump. I am very concerned about his talk about retribution, and my question is, what can those of you who stand with you do if he comes after you?
I've seen the lists. I've not sort of had my head in the sand. We are focusing on the work, so our message in the office is, if we do our jobs, if we're doing what we're supposed to do, things will be okay. We are taking steps in terms of security and things like that, so we live in this world. We want to be prepared. I haven't given thought, because I've kind of been focusing on sort of doing the work of how others can be. I think one of the biggest things is, we talk about on the train, if you see something, say something. I just think we can't normalize things that we wouldn't have tolerated 4 years ago or 8 years ago, and the sort of the work of this club and the activity. So I think the number one thing is when we see things that are unjust happen, that y'all speaking and doing the things you do, tabling and organizing, already, I think we see a little bit of, something that happened 4 or 8 years ago, there would be more activity on our streets, more discussion, and I think we can't lose that energy. So that's not specific to me, but I think more broadly on sort of the rule of law that, and I know this club will because you're so active, but continuing to lift up those voices, even when it may feel like, the people who should be listening aren't listening, but I think over time, the voices will win the day.
Again, thank you for coming. My question about the case we just got resolved, as you said, the jury has spoken. There's going to be another lawsuit, and could you talk about that and explain how that's going to work and what might happen? Thank you.
Sure. So this is the Daniel Penny verdict. I read in the paper today, so I don't. You may know more than I do. I read in the paper that the defendants, the now acquitted defendants, lawyers are contemplating a lawsuit against folks in government, including me. This malicious prosecution suit. Is that what you're talking about? Oh yes. So I think there are going to be a couple of, the criminal matter is over. I did read that the family is planning to sue. I don't know, much about that. That's sort of a separate process. And there was reporting today that the defendant's defense team may sue those in the city for bringing the case, including me. But we'll just, the Corporation Counsel, represents our office in court, and so if a lawsuit is filed, they'll defend that on our behalf, I presume. And the family's litigation is sort of completely separate and apart from my office. It's just them seeking, I presume, monetary relief in court. So I don't know much more than that.
Hey, thank you for your work and thanks for coming. I had a quick question about the CEO killer case. Most of the people I know have more sympathy for the killer than they do for the CEO, being that the CEO may have caused the death of so many people by not paying the bills and the corporate greed. In your prosecution of him, Mr. Luigi, are you going to take into account all of this sympathy that people might have for the killer?
So the short answer is no. It would be legally inappropriate for me to do so, right? We have, we've brought a charge of murder, gun possession, and also alleged possession of a false instrument. We intend to go into court and prove those charges. I meet with a lot of families of homicide victims. It's one of the most sobering parts of my role. And when I sit across from them and feel their grief and talk about how we're going to go forward in the case, usually with one of the counselors I mentioned, that's my focus. And I will say, this is my belief. Like killing someone is an abhorrent act. And we plan to go forward. And other issues, if someone doesn't like what the healthcare industry is doing, and in a prior life, when I was at the Attorney General's office, we brought lawsuits. We ran a healthcare hotline. There are other places for that. Our focus will be on proving the allegations we filed in court.
Testing, thank you. The current issue with Daniel Penny and Jordan Neely, it was one of the rare circumstances that traversed 4 troubling sectors that people view in the city: public safety, mental illness, homelessness, and race. Now, on Friday, the path was paved for a few of the charges to be removed, or a secondary charge. I think the manslaughter charge was moved and another one was issued. After the deadlock jury received that information, they came back with an acquittal. Can you speak to what was the idea from your office or the prosecution's perspective to say, let's remove the manslaughter charge when it's clear that the Marine in question was negligent with what he applied as a death choke?
So, I'm reluctant to talk too much about it. The jury has spoken, but I will say, I mean, the jury had sent two notes that there were deadlocked, and an indication that they wanted that they were not going to resolve that charge, and there was another charge, the criminally negligent charge, and we wanted them to be able to move on to that. So we made that decision, and as you said, they acquitted on that charge. We brought the case. We believe this is a case that should be brought. I also, as I must in my line of work, I believe deeply in our jury system. They had the case for 4 or 5 days, requested a lot of evidence, requested readbacks. They were sworn in. We asked them to do a job. Obviously, I would have, we brought the case, so we were seeking a conviction, and they didn't agree. I wasn't in the room, so I don't know how they arrived at that conclusion, but that is our system, and I abide by that system.
Thank you. Hi. My name is Teochino. I live uptown, and recently my rent went from $400 to $2,000 overnight. And one thing is the law is written a certain way, and many tenants across New York City that are facing the same situation that I have come to your office asking for help. And basically, we are in a state of gaslighting from you, and we want to know what's going to happen for the next 4 years if you go, and what decision we as tenant will have to do with your candidacy. And we would like to ask you in face-to-face.
Yeah, no, look, I'm not in a position to talk specifically about your specific unit or dwelling. I mean, we've certainly been sort of the most active district attorney in Manhattan. There was not a unit before. We have prosecuting 6 developers who we allege built the 421A tax subsidy program. Those cases are proceeding. We're proud of that work. As I mentioned earlier, we're prosecuting, I think, the person who occupied the number 1 worst landlord spot in deplorable conditions. What I will say from getting a fair amount of intake and engaging with kind of civil legal services, what makes a case criminal versus civil is, the quantum of proof, things that are very bad and that I certainly don't support, often are not criminal cases. And so we do have a sort of a wealth of resources, and we do end up referring people to, whether it's legal services or other providers, what makes kind of conditions criminal or sort of tenant harassing folks out can sometimes be very challenging to prove. We are doing that, and we may not be able to do it in your case, so I can't really kind of speak specifically to that. But
waiting for that referral that we talked about 4 years ago. We got contacted by your office, so we still don't have it.
So I would just say to go to a legal services component, you don't need any authority from us, right? I mean, but we can certainly, I can give you a,
This is about your office's relations to the New York City Police Department. I go to every monthly meeting of the local precinct, and your office really gets bashed.
yeah, so look, we have, depending upon the precinct council, that's not news to me, but I appreciate it being shared. Look, the NYPD is our partner every single day. Like we couldn't bring cases without them, and cases they investigate wouldn't be prosecuted without us. It's a relationship that I think is really good at the senior levels. Obviously, we have a new police commissioner, and so kind of getting to know each other, but certainly worked a lot together this last week, including the police commissioner and myself directly. What we have done on that relationship, which I think, depending upon the precinct council you go to, you see some of the fruits. We are meeting with the commanding officers, myself directly, one-on-one, particularly on on issues like shoplifting, the sort of day-to-day stuff, and talking about that, focusing on some of the people who are recidivists. And so I think at the commanding officer level, there's a good amount of information and knowledge about what we are doing, and I believe a mutual respect. I've also gone to precincts and done roll call and thanked officers. I mean, like, we could not function, my office could not without the NYPD, so I deeply respect the function. I do think sometimes it becomes a narrative on something, and we're always trying to arm everyone, but in particular our partners, with the actual data, and so we'll continue to do that. I think there are some issues of kind of ongoing maybe friction points. We have been active in our police accountability work, and that creates a friction point with some. That's not work that we're going to retreat from because of that friction. We have an independent duty. There are also cases sometimes that are brought to us where we make a different legal determination as to sort of what the outcome should be, sort of based on the evidence and the law. So we have that independent function, and we're not going to abdicate that. But at the same time, I tell my ADAs all the time, like, we have the privilege and benefit of sitting behind a desk and working on a search warrant and arrest warrant, and we hand that to an officer who goes out into harm's way. And so anyone who wants to have that sort of conversation about what they're seeing, and I'm open in all ears, and I think that has led to some sort of very productive discussions. But as your statement indicates, I do think it's hyper local. It varies by precinct to precinct, who the commander is, what the turnover has been, who's the precinct council president. I hope in those meetings you've seen folks from our community partnership unit who we try to have a presence at all of those meetings, and sometimes that helps. But I would actually love to connect with you afterwards to get a little more of a background.
Thank you, DA Bragg. I would like you please to talk about what your office can do about expediting the closure of Rikers Island, please.
So as folks probably know, right, the federal judge is in the process of moving towards receiver, it appears, and I think is going to be probably taking specific names. We're not a party to that litigation, so we don't have a direct seat at the table, but we're certainly in touch with the Department of Corrections on conditions, something I thought was very, very important. We brought in the Board of Corrections, which oversees, as the oversight agency, to train our ADAs on what the conditions are. I myself have gone to Rikers, so we don't have a direct seat at sort of the closing. I will say we are looking at the people we send to Rikers, mindful of the conditions, and trying to interact. For example, there's just the process of sort of how people are moving in between. If you found not fit to proceed to trial, and you go to a facility, and you go back to Rikers, and you don't get your medical treatment, you decompensate, and you go back. Like, that sort of revolving door accounts for a very significant percentage of who's at Rikers. So we've been trying to sort of engage on that issue with the people who control it to say, like, this is a problem, what do you need from us on our cases? Or another one, which is, not the heart of the problem, but sort of every piece of it matters, the time between when someone is convicted and if they're sentenced to state prison, they would then go upstate. They stay in Rikers for an administratively, I think, longer than I would expect, period. And so we've been talking about efficiencies there. So those aren't panaceas. They're not going to solve everything. But in a world where, kind of every person obviously matters in every case, we've been trying to sort of talk with the courts and the Department of Corrections about areas we see where we can pick up some efficiencies and reduce the population. And our numbers, when we look at that, are I mean, they're not seismic shifts, but they're shifts in the right direction.
Can we take one quickie?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. My name is Judy Weinstein, and I want to thank you for your tremendous contribution to our city. Since you're going to run again, I'm assuming that you have things left to do that you didn't get to, and I wonder if you could talk about those.
No, definitely. So maybe we'll go back to those three buckets. I think on violent crime, we want to double down on what we've been doing because we've seen the fruits of it. And so what we did on shootings in East Harlem, we want to do that in other neighborhoods. Some of that is resources, some of it's planning, and so we're in the process of that. We'll continue, hopefully if the funding doesn't become an issue, to expand our services folks to continue to be there for victims and survivors. So in violent crime, we're going to do more of the same. On the sort of quality of life crime that we see, we have a lot to do on mental health. And so some of the things that we've talked about, and I can't say which ones we're going to scale up yet because I want to wait and look at the data, but I do think the Court Navigator program I mentioned with Fortune, I would be shocked if, in 6 months I'm not talking to those who do appropriations and saying, look at this, you need to double it or triple it or quadruple it. So really hardening our mental health infrastructure is something we've done in a few neighborhoods. It's really worked. We call them hubs. So a lot of these are sort of mayoral agencies, but we've kind of used our convening power to bring together multiple agencies. So sort of there's a cluster of blocks that we're seeing a lot of sort of mental health, open air drug dealing, those kind of issues. We've convened the Department of Buildings because we found a lot of those areas have illegal scaffolding, and they've been helpful in pulling that down and literally bringing in sunlight. The Department of Health to sort of engage with people who are mental distress, homeless services, and then the police in my office. We've done that in sort of Central Harlem, led by our business improvement district leader. We're doing it at Times Square South, and we're now doing it in Washington Square Park. It's sort of resource intensive, and a lot of the resources are not my office, they are mayoral offices. But I want to see that scaled up because everywhere we've done it, it's hyper local. So we're talking like 3, 4, 5, 6 blocks. But it's had such, we've done it in places that really needed it. But it's had such a, it passes the eye test. So that's something we're also talking to City Hall about. I mean, they now want to do it in other boroughs. I said, that's not, let's do more here. So those are, I think that is, I don't want to say our singular focus, but that's going to be our primary focus, not even just sort of in another term, but next year, that's going to be a significant focus. We have, in terms of the legislative session coming up, another issue with sort of the mental health crisis is if you commit a felony crime and you're deemed incompetent, not fit to stand trial because you have serious mental illness, you get treatment until you're restored. If it's a misdemeanor, essentially the case is dismissed and you get no medical attention or support or scaffolding. So we've been talking to our legislative leaders about that. So some of it is legislative, some of it is programmatic, and then some of it's within the four corners of our work. So I've been advocating, and our Chief Judge Wilson also is very receptive to it, we've doubled the problem-solving courts. I don't know if we have the capacity in the short term to double again, but we certainly need to continue that expansion. So that would be sort of in the more of the same. So those are some of it, but that I think is when I look at what is driving crimes, the mental health crisis is sort of the big thing. Some of it sort of is beyond our four corners, but we need to really be in the conversation and help drive it. The one other area that I would say, the one of our kind of 7 index crimes, so in aggregate, index crimes are down in Manhattan. The one that is up are felony assaults, driven by 2 things. One is the stranger assaults on the street. We actually just announced the indictments in 2 stranger assault cases today. So we're gonna continue to do those cases, but be much noisier about them. And the other thing driving that felony assault number is domestic violence. And so we have a pilot program with about $1 million in funding from the governor that's going to allow us to intervene earlier to support survivors and also to do earlier evidence collection. And we're piloting that in Washington Heights, and I think that was going to help the domestic violence numbers go down and by extension, the felony assault numbers. So that's some of what we're planning. Okay. I was just going to say, it's great to sort of feel the energy in the room and to sort of go back to your question. There's so much work to be done, and I'm looking forward to being in cycle, being able to talk to y'all and do it in partnership and, maybe get out in some of these green shirts again. Thank you so much.
We are so proud of you and so proud of the work you've done for us, and we're excited to have an opportunity to endorse you again in your next campaign. Thank you so, so much for coming. Our cup runneth over tonight because I think I see Brad Hoylman-Siegel and Michael Lasher back there. Have you come to visit and say hello? Come on up. Hi there. How are you? Thanks for dropping by.
Oh, of course. Thank you. Thank you for having me. State Senator Brad Hoylman-Siegel. Let's give it up for the DA again. He's doing an amazing job. I want to tell you something. I was out in Queens 2 weeks ago with the District Attorney of Queens, Melinda Katz, where the governor and she announced a haul of $2 million worth of stolen retail items, mostly from Sephora, which I can relate to because I have a 14-year-old daughter, but not that she steals things from Sephora, no. But she certainly had a lot of these products on the table. The reason the district attorney was able to charge in that case, it involved items that were stolen by one individual and then through a third party put on the internet, namely social media, Facebook Marketplace, and Amazon and others. We closed a loophole with my legislation. It's called e-fencing. It used to be that you had to possess the item physically in order to be charged with fencing. Now, if you are facilitating the sale of a stolen item online, you can be charged. That's because of District Attorney Alvin Bragg. He wrote the bill with me. We passed it in the budget. And the District Attorney of Queens is taking credit for it. Go figure. But the credit goes to Alvin Bragg. And I just want to say happy holidays to everyone. We've got our work cut out for us in the coming year. But even though we, got our shellacking in November, at the state level, we all know that Proposal 1 did extremely well, especially here on the West Side. Our rights for transgender youth and abortion protections and civil rights and liberties for people with disabilities are protected lock solid in our state constitution. Thank God. In addition to that, happy to report that the state Senate, we're only down one senator from where we were before. I'll let Micah report on the Assembly. So Democrats did extremely well, not to mention those 3 House seats that we flipped, thanks to everyone here. So that's tremendous. But the municipal elections, I think, will give us a cathartic opportunity to stand up once again for our values here on the west side of Manhattan, no matter who you're supporting for, mayor, controller, public advocate, borough president, just saying. All of that is going to be extremely important. So, it's going to be exciting, enthralling, and I think a real opportunity once again to show New York and the rest of the country what we're made of. Thank you very much. Happy holidays, everyone. Yes. Yeah, I got to get into the candidate game, right? I'm here. Yes, I announced this week that I'm running for Manhattan Borough President. Thank you. The second time I'm running for the second. Last time I came up short 2 points to our great borough president, Mark Levine, who is now running for city controller. So, so yes, I will be speaking to you, I think, in January at your forum, and look forward to engaging with everyone here on the issues that we all care about. Public education, making certain that we have enough apartments for New Yorkers, ensuring that we look after the most vulnerable in our community, including the asylum seekers, and fighting to make sure that our public safety, working with the district attorney, is a top priority along with mental health. So a lot of issues. Thank you for that plug. Okay, thanks very much.
You can count on us, Brad. You know that. And now, Michael Lasher.
Hi, everybody, and good evening. It is wonderful to be here with you at Three Parks, and it is really wonderful to be here with two of the finest public servants we have in New York City, our extraordinary District Attorney Alvin Bragg, who, you know, we knew what an awesome guy he was before the rest of the nation did. So I feel that way, and my great friend Brad Hoylman-Siegel, who fights for this community every day in the state senate, and perhaps the two of them might make for quite a team across the borough. Just saying. It's my great privilege to be coming in as your state assembly member beginning in January. Give us a little bit of grace as we get up and running. We are actively hiring staff. We will take over the office on 104th Street at the beginning of January. And when people ask me, what are my plans for day one? The most important thing we can do is have an active office that is ready and able to help you with the challenges you face, the challenges the neighborhood faces, and we're going to endeavor to hit the ground running in that respect. At the same time, we are going to face enormous challenges in the year ahead. There is a regime coming in Washington that not only is hostile to the values that I think make New York what it is, make this community what it is, but really are going to pursue an agenda that aims to tear apart what we have in New York. The capacity of New York to be a thriving city because of our differences, a place that celebrates differences, that thrives on the basis of difference, that is fundamentally anathema to the Trump regime. And I believe that we can expect that they will do everything in their power to tear apart what makes this city great. And that is and responding to that is going to require a lot of creativity. It's going to require legislative activity. It's going to require prosecutorial and law enforcement activity, because I can guarantee you, when it comes to going after people that are cheating workers out of wages, when it comes to corporate fraud or environmental misconduct, all of the things, fair housing discrimination, all of the things that we count on, in large part, the federal government to protect the citizenry from, that's going to go by the wayside. And we're going to need to really step up as a legislature, as law enforcement, to fill those gaps. And at the same time, what's the federal government going to be doing? Instead of standing up for those values, they're going to be doing incredibly cruel things. They're going to be going after our most vulnerable people. They're going to be going after the programs that they depend on. And if we're going to come through this, the city that we are, proud, strong, and a beacon to the belief that we are stronger together, that is going to require a lot of joint effort. It's going to require a lot of activism, because politicians we can't get it done alone. We're going to need you by our side, organizing, driving energy, pushing us on, and I do believe that together we can maintain the proposition that we are stronger together and not better off in some dystopian world in which it's everybody pitted against everyone else, which is what Trump wants. So but never bet against New York, folks, and never bet against the West Side. We live in an extraordinary place, and so I am so grateful to everyone here for your support and your friendship, and I look forward to working with you on many important fights ahead. Thank you so much.
When Micah closed his campaign office in June, he's a generous guy. He donated all of his office furniture to 3 Parks so they could use it in the presidential campaign office. I never thanked you publicly. And I don't think I ever thanked publicly all of you. How many of you participated at the storefront? Right. Yay! We tried so hard, but we won't stop trying. All right. The senator mentioned, Danielle, wishing everybody a happy holiday. I want to pick up on that and Danielle is going to tell you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Danielle Gerard. Some of you may remember me. I just want to let you know that the Three Parks Independent Democrats holiday party that Senator Hoylman-Siegel referred to without knowing is on Sunday at Abigail's, this Sunday, December 15th at Abigail's at 102nd Street and Broadway from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. It will give all of you who came to the storefront an opportunity to see your fellow volunteers again, mix and mingle with members of Three Parks Independent Democrats, and just raise a glass and start the new year happy about our local elected officials. Dan?
I'm sorry, what does it cost to attend?
It does not cost anything to attend. You are our guests, and we would love to have you. So please come to Abigail's on Sunday from 4 to 6 to eat, drink, and be merry.
Thank you. Before we hear from our district leaders, I want to introduce Liza Cooper. Many of you will know the Metro Theater on 100th Street and Broadway that's been vacant forever, practically. And there's been plan after plan that has fallen through over the past 10, 15 years. And I think Liza is going to have very good news for you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening. So firstly, I just want to see a show of hands. How many of you have been inside Metro Theater and have a memory of it? Wow. I'd love to interview all of you. And how many of you know, or who would like to guess how long it's been shuttered? 20 years. In 2025, it'll be 20 years. And it's been nearly 4 years since New Friends of Metro Theater, a community group that came together to reopen the theater because it's just been closed for too long. And that includes Dan Cohen, district leader, Keith Harris, among the many folks who have joined together to reopen the theater. It's been a roller coaster ride, and we've all been on it together with a lot of disappointments. I never imagined how hard it would be, but I have some hopeful news. So this summer we endorsed, as a group, New Friends of Metro Theater, endorsed Ira Deutschman, who is a movie producer, and his nonprofit Upper West Side Cinema Center. So you can look it up, uwscc.org, because of his vision to have a 5-screen movie theater, including mostly independent films. Yes, a real art house theater in our neighborhood. Several of the theaters will show blockbuster films, but it'll also have an educational programming center for students, for adults to learn about film. There will be a beautiful cafe open to the neighborhood, and there will also be a senior docent program. So just a really wonderful vision for our neighborhood. So we said, yes, this is what we want. It was all over the news, New York Times, etc. And just 2 months ago, Ira signed a contract with the Bialik family. They are the inheritors of Albert Bialik's great fortune, Metro Theater and other holdings. And he signed a contract with them to give him a few months to raise a very large sum, almost $7 million. So $6.9 million. So if you know anyone who can write a big check, we need them at the table. So in 2 months, they raised half of it. So they have $3.5 million, and they have until January 10th. So we have 1 month to raise the rest of it. And so I encourage you to go to their website, uwscc.org, find out more, see how you can get involved, because we want to flip this neighborhood and make it beautiful again, make it fun, and have something that we can all meet together as a community and see a movie. So if you have any questions, I'm here to answer, but happy to, yes. Sure, and I have some handouts for everyone, so if you're interested, I will be giving them out in the back, but it's UWS, like Upper West Side, Cinema Center, CC, uwscc.org, and you can visit it, find out more about the amazing vision that's planned for that. You can also visit our Facebook page, New Friends of Metro Theater, make sure it has new in it, and UWSCC on Facebook as well, and that will have updates. So thank you, everyone. See you at the movies.
Hi there, everybody. Do you want to start?
Hello, we can work together.
We'll do a duet. So.
Yeah. Well, what a wonderful crowd we have here tonight.
So who are you?
Oh, I'm Teresa Cantor. I am one of the district leaders.
And I'm Dan Cohen. I'm the other district leader. Good evening.
And we thank you all so much for coming out. It's a great mix of volunteers and club members. And we thank you for coming to our first endorsement meeting of the season, which was for District Attorney, right? And we have 4 more endorsement meetings coming up, which I want to briefly tell you about. 2 in January, January the 8th and the 22nd. And Brad Hoylman Siegel has already been invited to the January the 8th meeting. We'll have the candidates for Manhattan Borough President and hopefully Controller, and the 22nd Mayor. Then we will also, during that time and also in February, be endorsing for our City Council, both the 6th and the 7th, also judicial delegates, district leaders, have I missed anyone? Civil court if we have a candidate. So the question is, how do you get to vote in an endorsement? If you're a club member, you will need to pay your dues for 2025. And we have folks at the table in the back. If you're a person who wants to join, a new member, again, you can pay now or in January. You'll be paid for 2025. And you will be eligible to vote in the endorsement meetings after a 30-day period, okay? And the more people that we have voting, the more of an impact our endorsement makes on the candidate's campaign. So we do hope that you work with us and make sure that we elect the best candidates to represent us.
Thank you.
Dan?
Thank you, Teresa. Liza, you have one other thing you wanted to say?
I just wanted to say, I didn't get a chance to, but Brad made it possible for $500,000 to go to this Metro project, so yeah. So, thank you so much.
So, hi, I'm still Dan Cohen. I'm the district leader here. I'm curious, who has never been to a Three Parks meeting before? I'm not going to call on you, but I do want to see by raise of hands if you've never been to a meeting before. That's great. Welcome. Nice to have you. There's so many of you, I'm not going to call you out and ask you to introduce yourself and say your name, but there are 2 things. One is if you haven't signed up already, there's a sign-up sheet in the back so you can learn more about meetings in the future. And then there are brochures. There are green brochures which have information about the club. If you want to join us and pay dues, we'd be delighted to have you. They're all in the back. A couple of quick things. First of all, great to see you. I hope to see you at the holiday party. Thank you, Liza, for the update on the Metro Theater. The club has produced a number of luminaries. One of them was Carol Edmead, who was president of this club for a number of years, and perhaps this got mentioned at the beginning of the meeting.
No, she was president and 2 years before you, 95 to 97.
Here, said with definitiveness. And then she went on and she got elected to be a judge. She served for a number of years, and then she retired from that position, and she was appointed the Manhattan Borough Commissioner on the Board of Elections. And unfortunately, she recently passed. So we honor her and her work and her achievements. Judge Carol Edmead will be fondly remembered, and we will have something in the newsletter talk a little bit more about her work. But it's a moment of some sadness. She was a marvelous person with an excellent sense of humor, and she was actually a bit profane, despite being a judge. We also are looking forward to our January meetings. We have quite a few meetings because petitioning, where you sign those pieces of paper to get people on the ballot, that starts in March. It used to be, February 21st. I have like line readings on the side. It used to be that we would have petitioning later in the spring because we would have a primary in September, so we'd have up until June to be able to collect signatures. But now the primary is in June, so you got to get signatures to get on the ballot in February 21st is when it starts, but basically the month of March. So everything gets moved back. So I know we just finished with one election, and I won't revisit that, but we're now like sort of marching headlong into the next one. So bear with us, please be involved, learn more about us, and come to meetings so you can see what's happening and learn about all of the wonderful things that are happening in this club and in our neighborhood. Are there any quick questions about the club or quick? Yes, is it Keith Harris? Yes. Yes. Hold on, we have a microphone, even though I could practically reach out and shake your hand. Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
It's good to speak to you, Dan,
Yes.
versus texting you.
Yes, indeed.
And seeing you in person. I'm his kid's coach, so we text pretty
He's a great
frequently.
basketball coach. If you need a basketball coach, talk to Keith.
So my question is, for those seeking endorsements that may be running candidates, will they be able to submit media for dispersal, like as an introduction to others in the club to get to know them a little bit better before you go into the voting process?
So we're going to have a bunch of meetings, but the voting is going to take place later on in I think February. So there'll be an opportunity for people to come to meetings and hand out campaign lit at the meetings, both really pretty much leading up until the endorsement vote in February. All right. I feel like this is the moment, I do see you, that I should also acknowledge our sound engineer, Steve Max, who does tremendous work and never gets enough credit for keeping the sound at a decent pitch. Yes? Wait for the mic. Hold on, son. We've gone to great efforts to have microphones.
City elections are ranked choice. Will there be an explanation of ranked choice, and do we expect to endorse individual candidates or a slate for various offices?
So this club does not do ranked choice as his endorsements. We endorse one candidate for the office. When you vote, there will be ranked choice. We will do an explanation of ranked choice as a sort of public information courtesy, for sure. Absolutely. We haven't done that. Generally, we're forward positive thinking as opposed to don't vote for that guy. Although I think the sentiment of this club will become apparent over the next couple of months where our decision stands. Other questions of substance or style? All right, and then Madam President, are we good to go? Are we all set? I think then if there is a motion to adjourn. Thank you all so much. Great to see you. Happy holidays. See you at the holiday party. I think so. I'm glad we got Carol Edmead in.